Good afternoon, everybody. Let's try that again. Good afternoon, everybody. I am, first of all, grateful for the Almighty blessing us today with better weather than last week. Can I get an amen on that one? And so we are very, very grateful that the Almighty blessed us with a little bit better weather today, and that He blessed us with you all to join us in our conversation today in this beginning kickoff of Engineering Week at the United States House of Representatives, and also the end, the last week of Black History Month. So again, these two combining concepts are really what is the focus of our conversation today. Embedded in the Declaration of Independence is the concept that many of us all know probably, that we hold these true self-evidence that all men are created equal, right? For the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And in concept of that, also included in the Constitution, the framing documents, were the concepts revolving around innovation. In fact, patents are very much embedded in our Constitution and our history. Many of our founding fathers were themselves patent holders. And so inclusive in this concept, I think, is what we are here talking about today, nearly 400 years later. And that is, where are we in this continuum, right? Where are we in the concept of both creating innovations, right, that will build our collective economy, and in ensuring that all men and women in our country are able to share in that collective enterprise of innovation and of opportunity, right? That is the conversation that we're having today. So the president, as you all may know, in 2012 set out a vision for our nation to create a rebound, if you will, to create an explosion of opportunity and innovation by growing the ranks of innovators, science and technology professionals. He set out with the goal of creating by 2022, which is 10 years from the time that he made this announcement, by 2022, 1 million new innovators, 1 million new science, technology, engineering, and math professionals. And from that, the concept was that with that explosion of innovation, that we as a nation would see, goods and products or services that would be remarkably transformative, that would take our nation just that step further and actually help us to regain our position as the innovative capital of the world, which some would argue has been ceded to other places across this world. So that was the president's mission. Before that conversation, before that announcement, some of us had been huddled together to find out what we could do. We had actually initially formed in order to help the president get reelected, but particularly to help him focus his reelection on the whole idea of expanding the conversation around innovation. But we knew that after the election, we needed to take off our partisanship hats, that this was a bipartisan conversation. We had to work with Republicans and Democrats alike to make sure that we collectively would be able to be on the same team, and that's the team of the United States of America, right? And that team involving expansion of our enterprise and expansion of our innovation enterprise in particular. So we formed our organization, STEM4US, shortly after the president's announcement to help him to achieve that goal, not just for his administration, for us all. And that's what we've been doing ever since. We started soon thereafter with these power lunches that we crafted and patented almost, the STEM4US Capitol Hill Power Lunches. And each time that we've been meeting, we've been taking a different element of the conversation about STEM and innovation and diversity. Because in this 1 million number that the president has put out there for a nation, we think that again in 2030, as we all know, the nation will be a majority nation of people of color. So we believe by 2030 that at least 50% of the people who are in the technology sector and the innovation sectors in general should be Latino, African American, women, and also our original brothers and sisters here of the Native American community. And so that's our goal as well in terms of achieving the president's goal. So that's the backdrop for our conversation today. So fast forward, 2016 budget is on the table. Just some weeks ago, the president announced it. And in that budget was a commitment for $3 billion to be invested in some of the STEM programs. And so again, when we think of the number $3 billion, it sounds like a lot, but when we look at, again, his goal for 1 million new STEM professionals, those of us who have math backgrounds know that breaks down to, Linda, just $3,000 per person. Clearly, as some of us are also who are involved in training people in the coding of computer technology, like our colleague to the right, will realize that $3,000 per pupil can barely buy one semester of coding classes, not to mention a whole training program that you need. And that question then leads us to this conversation is that enough? Is the commitment of $3 billion, particularly to NSF, sufficient in order for us to achieve the goal that has been set for the nation? And again, that's the conversation that we hope to have today. And then having this conversation, we hope to arm each one of you all with the information and the resources and contacts that will allow you to go back and engage your members of Congress, to dialogue with them about whether or not this needs to be increased or decreased. Hopefully you will agree that it needs to be increased, and how to go about making sure that the monies that are invested are spent wisely. So before I move into this conversation, I want to first of all recognize, and I want you all to look at the back of the program, because I know we all look at the front of the program, but look at the back of the program. I want to recognize those people who have invested in us and invested in this conversation. We'll start off with the Mathematical Association of America. Again, we want to recognize that the M in STEM stands for math, and we realize that and we appreciate that. As a former mechanical engineer in the manufacturing sector, we like to talk about the manufacturing and the application of math in that manufacturing process, but we realize that the definition is the definition. And so we appreciate the Math Association for reminding us of that definition and reminding us of the importance of math in this conversation. Of course, the University of District of Columbia, the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, is one of the foremost institutions that is leading in the path of developing the next generation of science and technology innovators. And so we're grateful that the dean is here representing the University of the District of Columbia and their School of Engineering. Of course, the Patriots Technology Training Center. I don't know if you all know, but just this past weekend, I had a wonderful opportunity to go to my first Lego competition hosted by the Patriots Training Center. And these brothers and sisters, I mean, honestly, it was amazing to see the young people so enthusiastic about STEM. I mean, and indeed, you don't really understand it until you're really right with these young people and seeing how excited they are, as excited about, math and science as they are excited about, athletics. So again, we are grateful that the Patriots Training Center is doing its good work and is joining with us today. And of course, lastly, I want to focus, again, a little bit of attention back on my hometown, and that is of Highland Park, Michigan, because our mayor, DeAndre Wyndham, was here with us just a week ago or so. And we introduced him to the folks over in Congressman Conyers' office, and immediately he began to understand that his community, our community from which we hail, is suffering financially. As many of you all might know about the city of Highland Park, or in fact, the entire state of Michigan. But he realizes that innovation in America started in Michigan, and particularly it started in Highland Park. If any of you all know anything about the modern history of automation and anything about the even the middle wage, the middle income concept, the hourly wage revolution came from the city of Highland Park. The Model T plant that was started in Highland Park was the first automation universe and exploration into the concept of paying the workers a fair wage, paying them enough so they can actually afford what you are producing. Henry Ford started that concept right there in Highland Park, Michigan. And from that exploded not only the state of Michigan, but the entire nation. So again, and the world, thank you very much. You're right. The automotive industry, absolutely, I would say, really made a transformation in terms of our entire living. And so again, I want to recognize the mayor for the city of Highland Park for returning that innovation back to Highland Park and joining us with this conversation. Even though he couldn't be here in present, he wanted to make sure that he was supporting this and that we could reach out across the country and make sure this conversation continues, which is what we're doing today with our televised broadcast. So without any further ado, I want to move straight into our conversation. So Don, can you please come on up and give us welcome remarks from the Congresswoman's office.
I just want to say thanks for everyone being here. Apologies for the Congresswoman, she couldn't make it. She's actually stuck in Dallas. Her flight was canceled. But I think, first of all, I'll be very brief. I do have to run off. But I want to thank everyone, Talib especially, and our distinguished speakers, Dr. Braddy, Dr. Shetty, and Mr. Jones here for coming along. I think putting together these events is really critical to get the conversation going about why we need to invest in STEM. And the Congresswoman would, highlight the fact that if we're going to compete in the 21st century, in a global economy, the U.S. needs to continue leading innovation and technology, and that starts with the workforce, a pipeline to those jobs starting K through 12, early education, and our undergraduate research and beyond. So I'll be really brief. I think for the most part, we're talking about the president's budget in 2016, and we see a 6% increase in the federal budget in R&D, 3.6% of which, as Talib mentioned, is $3 billion focused on STEM education. So that's something that the Congresswoman, the ranking member on science, is very happy about, and hopefully we can see that process move forward here on the Hill. Some of that includes $100 million for Teacher and Pathways program to get better teachers, more trained for the future of STEM education, $125 million to update our next generation high schools. All these initiatives coming from the Department of Ed, from the President, an additional $135 million for NSF's undergraduate research. So we continue on all lengths of that pipeline so we can continue leading in the 21st century. That being said, we're in an environment where folks are looking at budgets very closely. And so the ranking member and the chairman, I'm sure, will be working together to make sure that we continue to focus our efforts to make sure that we invest in education, in STEM, in all of our agencies, whether that's NOAA, NASA, Department of Energy, we're working with the Office of Science Technology Policy at the White House. But something I think folks would be interested here too is that it's not just these scientific agencies like the Department of Energy and NIST. A lot of this is Department of Ed. And many of you may know that we may be H.R. 5, the Student Success Act, which is the education bill that is currently known as No Child Left Behind, will be hitting the floor this week, most likely. And so something we want to highlight is the fact that in this 857-page bill, STEM is not mentioned once. And that's a concern, that this is the education bill that's going to focus all of our K through 12 education, that STEM is mentioned not a single time. That's something we're going to look at. We're worried about that, and obviously this is not an end-all. The discussion is still open. It's going to go to the floor. We'll have members talk about that. But I want to raise that point in your minds as well, that this spans every industry. If we're going to compete, that STEM education pipeline starts from early education all the way up. It affects every part of our economy. And so that's something that the Congresswoman is going to be focused on and bringing attention to. So with that, I think I'm glad to see all these folks coming together on these important points. I hope that we can continue to dialogue. You can always feel free to reach me. Talib, you can share everyone my contact information. But I hope that we can all get on board with the fact that this is a nonpartisan issue. We should be educating our students. And the last thing I want to mention is diversity. Obviously, that's a critical component. This million new innovators, we want to make sure that that's representative of the country. And that's why my boss introduced the STEM Opportunities Act, which specifically looks at all the scientific agencies and saying, let's collect more data. We may not be taking any actions yet, we don't know, but let's create an evidence-based approach about how we can expand opportunities that can help our folks, women and minorities, be involved in STEM and sort of be a more accurate slice of America in those fields. With that, thanks everyone for coming again. I do have to run, but Talib, I think you're doing a great job here at STEM4US, and I hope we can continue doing more events such as this.
Excellent. Don is running out the door, but he has agreed to take at least one question. Does anybody have any specific question about the legislation that is going to the floor of the House, or any other aspect of the comments that he mentioned? Young woman in the back there, just state your name. I see you got another hand. Don, you mind too? Because you got only two hands.
Sure.
Okay.
I'll do as best I can.
Okay. Only two questions. Young lady in the purple.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sylvie Bello. I'm with the Cameroon American Council. My interest here today is how STEM and immigration go together. What are the Congresswoman's views, and especially also the Science Committee on immigration and STEM? Because there've been a lot of different technology companies who have invested heavily on immigration, but we feel, we work on African immigrant issues, that they are mostly focused on other parts of the world, and not, and this being Black History Month, frankly, not on Caribbean and African immigrants. Thank you.
Certainly. Well, first of all, Sylvie, it's great to see you again. I used to work with you when I was working for Mr. Horsford from Las Vegas.
Yes.
So it's great to see you. I'm glad to have you here. I can't speak directly to your point. I think it's something I can definitely follow up with you on. I think it's a concern. Unfortunately, immigration is not typically in the jurisdiction of our committee. But again, all these lines are kind of blurred. And so I can definitely follow up with you. I think it's something we want to take a look at, whether that's working in collaboration with Ranking Member Karen Bass and the Africa Subcommittee, and working with our friends over in the Judiciary. Something we can look at. I can't speak to any particular policy point on that. I apologize.
Thank you.
I can say that as a former chief counsel to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, whose executive assistant you are sitting right next to, she would be actually a very important person to be involved in that conversation. And as I remember from doing this for her, she was very much keyed in on making sure that the immigration opportunities were benefiting all people, right? Not just people coming from the Latin American communities, but all people. And two, making sure that, for example, the monies that we are deriving from that additional H-1B visa program, perhaps, was invested in HBCUs as well as other minority-serving institutions. So I can, and I would imagine that the Congresswoman is still committed to those same principles. Again, second question?
Yeah, real quickly, Randy McKay, I'm a local Metro Warrior STEM local organization here in the DMV. I see hundreds of kids in STEM on a day-to-day basis, face-to-face with the parents. I have a little challenge, the top-down approach. I've even been I don't think we have a money problem, because I see the kids every day. And I've had the opportunity to see the president. Two of my kids actually was in the White House, face-to-face with the president on this big STEM initiative, meeting with his leaders, and even meet with some of the congresswomen and men in this area. And I'm here on a day-to-day basis, and I don't see the support. I mean, honestly, I see a lot of the money, but it doesn't reach some of the grassroots that I've been knocking on the walls for several years. I have 15 kids who have patents. I've been at the top level, I've been at the bottom level, and I guess I need to find out how do you, I believe in hitting it from the one-on-one approach. I'm seeing kids from 5 years old to 17.
Okay.
That's what I'm dealing with that. You won't get them in college if you don't get them at that area. I mean, all these college programs are great, but if you don't get them at K and 3, where I'm seeing them at, you get that excitement. So I believe in a bottom-up approach.
So let's get the brother to answer the question.
I just want to try to find out, how do I communicate through the...
That's a good question. That's a very good question, brother. Don, his point, I think, is well stated, particularly the initiatives on the K to 3, because as we know, I'm sure as our colleague from the Math Association is going to tell you, that if we don't catch children by the time they hit the 4th grade, particularly as it relates to math, it's a game over, right? In terms of their interest. Second of all, his organization is doing the work, right? The $3 billion being invested, let's say if we get it all, right? How do we make sure that organizations such as his, as well as Patriot Center, get that type of investment?
I think that's a really good question. I think that's where I bring up the point of it's not just what we're doing at federal agencies. It starts with the policy. It starts with things like ESE, the Elementary Secondary Education Act. Are we at the bottom, at the very beginning, focusing the monies in the right place? Currently, the new USDA bill eliminates Title IV, Title V, and sort of lumps it into one giant block grant and says schools can fund what they want in these areas. Well, I would say that we don't think that's good enough. We need to know that the money is going to go into these certain areas, whether it's after-school programs, after-school lunches, or if it's STEM education. Creating those dedicated funding streams, I think, is critical. And we've had that, and the fact that that's going to go away is a problem. And to get to your point, while if we want to see the money get there, first of all, the money's got to go there. We got to get money in the pot, and not just the president's request, but the Congress has got to appropriate that money, and then hopefully then see the effects. And we need to gather evidence to see what strategies are working, or where is the money just going to overhead. And then we can look at that and take a look at that down the line and fix these programs and making sure that the kids get the money. But that doesn't start unless the money is there in the first place.
All right, so let's give again a warm round of applause to Don Andrews from the Committee on Science and Technology. And again, as we start the dialogue, there might be other colleagues of his from the various committees who can weigh in on the conversation. Again, Don, let your congresswoman know that we want to join with her. Hopefully we'll be able to sit down with both her as well as the chairman to see if we can help them to achieve what I think is an American concept, not a Republican or a Democrat, but an American concept that is making sure that our children and our young people and adults, period, are the most trained and the most prepared to innovate in the world. Thank you very much, Don.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
All right, so let me go into the conversation that has been started, I think, already. And I think that we have started this conversation already by going into both the topics. And as the moderator, I want to ask each one of the panelists to first just give us a brief introduction of themselves and share with us your particular take on both the concept of innovation and the amount of money that has been dedicated for innovation, whether it's enough or not, and then in particular how we can make sure that that gets down to, as the colleague in the back said, to the young people, particularly young people of color, who are actually interested in making sure that they are part of not just the technology user community, but the technology developer community. Linda?
Well, I'm Linda Braddy. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Mathematical Association of America. We're located here in D.C. And I absolutely agree. There's research that shows that you have to catch students really young or they'll lose interest in mathematics. So our association focuses on undergraduate math education, so higher ed, the 4-year undergraduate experience in mathematics. And so we have the issue of what do we do with the students who are showing up today unprepared for mathematics at the undergraduate level. So they need to take at least one mathematics course that's developmental or remedial or whatever you want to call it, 0 credit. They don't get any credit in their degree. And so that's a huge problem that we face, a huge issue we have to deal with every day. And then we also, even when we get students who are intending to major in mathematics or STEM in some STEM field, we have a project going on that's been, I guess it's in its 5th year, and we received about $1.5 million from the NSF 5 years ago to run this. It's a really in-depth research study that's looking for successful calculus programs. What makes for a successful calculus program for those students who do come intending to major in math or a STEM field? And so one of the findings that has come out of that, there have been a lot, but one of the ones I thought you would be interested in is that the way we teach calculus in general today disproportionately washes out minorities and women. And so we also, and there are various pieces of data that we have that we've used to come to that conclusion. As far as the why, that's always the big question. And so one of the things that we have found, we also support a community in mathematics called inquiry-based learning. So there are people who teach using an inquiry-based approach. Instead of the teacher lecturing, the students actually present problems to each other and the teacher doesn't lecture. And so that has been shown. We support this community. They have an annual conference every year that we co-sponsor. And they have a researcher who's been studying that as a method of teaching. And her research has shown that whatever advantage white males have in our classrooms in calculus, inquiry-based learning levels the playing field. And so the women and the minorities don't necessarily perform better than they would have, but whatever advantage white males have, it sort of takes that away and levels it, and so they can all achieve equally as well. And so those are the kinds of things that we have been focused on. We also have programs for students in middle school and high school. We have a competitions program. We have almost 400,000 students a year who participate in our American math competitions. But I thought you all would probably be interested in those findings because we're talking about how to help students achieve in mathematics and STEM. And we have I have a report that I'll share with anybody who's interested that does address workforce development issues. And we had several nonprofits in mathematics and statistics that joined together with the National Science Foundation on this project and talked about what we could do to try to ensure that we have enough STEM professionals and enough workers who have STEM competencies, even if they're not counted as a STEM professional, but just people who have STEM competencies for jobs that are in non-STEM fields, because that's also a problem. So,
Thank you very
Other
much. Can we
projects?
actually ask Thurman, can you actually come to the microphone for our television audience to be able to actually make some remarks?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thurman Jones. I'm the president of the Patriots Technology Training Center. And for the last 18 years, I've been working with 5th to 12th grade students, getting them involved with STEM careers. The way I found in my 18 years, the competition is the best way, one of the best ways for students to get involved with this STEM career. Session, we just did our Lego competition, and we had 10 teams. We were very blessed with Lockheed Martin being one of our sponsors. We had like 10 teams, about 70 students, and it was like a 4-month project where they had to do a research, they had to know how to build the Lego and also programming. So there was in 3 competitions. U.S. first competition, you had a chance to get in 2 competitions. Then we had our annual competition among our own 10 team at Bowie State University. And another one of our competitions is the cybersecurity, because we feel that whatever you want to be in STEM, you got to do the research. You know, what do it take to get there? And so with our cybersecurity competition, you had to do a research paper on a career. You had to do a brochure, a poster board, and a website. Because you're going to be part of the marketing and how do you promote this career. And I believe in competition because I wasn't an A student like most of you in the audience. And so I just feel we need to B, C, D, A. Everybody interested in just come on board. So you don't have to have a 2.3, 3.0 average. But working as a team, we also get parent engagement because their parents want to see them. So we try to make it like a football game or a basketball game because you have to compete against other teams. So once you do your research paper, you do your brochure poster, then we have a dinner, and then you have to give a 5-minute presentation in front of different people in the industry. And this helps them line them up with internship, mentors, and stuff like that. Because then you see who wants to get involved with these students to help them with their career. We have a solar system competition. We were very blessed with the DC Business Roundtable and the Maryland Business Roundtable and the Navy. They sponsored our students to go to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. Same concept. We're working with NASA. They do a research paper on NASA centers. They have 10 centers, and the winning team goes to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. We have a flight simulation competition, which we have some of my colleagues from FAA. They're part of our team. And what's going on with this one is 5 on the team. They had the research paper on the aerospace career, and then the winning team goes to Tuskegee University. We also have I should have gave you the age group, but for our third to 5th grade, we have amusement park design competition. So everything I do is a competition because we want them to work as a team. We also have an annual youth summit that we host at Bowie State, and we also support NSBE. We had one of the largest chapters in the country. We have reached almost to 500 students one year. And so we go to the NSBE conference. They have a summer, fall, and national conference. So we try to expose the students as much as we can. Once again, I think one of the things that in getting these students to be engineers, we need help in the math area. We need more programs in K through 12, for them to get really understand math and just make sure that they continue to take math throughout 5th grade to 12th grade, because that's the group that we work with. As far as money in the budget, we always can use more money. And like Mr. Randy said, how do we get to the person with the checkbook? Is that the question, Randy? So that's both of it. He has a NSBE chapter too. And so we work together over the years. But the key is, how do we find the funding? Because we down here in the valley working with the student. A lot of times we don't have time to come up here and chase the money, but we depend on this brother right here to help us and tell us who we need to talk to. So that's one of the biggest challenges that most nonprofits have. Who has the checkbook? That's just a joke I always say with someone, that we need to find the person with the checkbook. So we need the help. You know, we got the kids, we got the program, and we're just trying to move to the next level to help our students in the pipeline. So I want to thank you, my brother.
And again, I'm glad that we started in the order that we did, because we first started from the theory, then we talked about the nonprofits who are applying that theory to down to the particular K through 12 level. Now I think it's appropriate for us to talk about what we're doing once people go and have had that training in the K through 4th, and they're excited about math, and they join the Patriots Learning Center, and they get involved with some of the excellent work that they're doing in terms of robotics and getting involved with math competitions, and then prepare themselves to go to college, and what type of support there is and what more support there needs to be so our colleges can produce more and even better trained professionals in the STEM fields than we are doing currently. And again, I think that the dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at the University of District of Columbia, Dr. Devdas Shetty, can really shed some light on this conversation. Dean?
Thank you, Talib. I'm the Dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and the University of District of Columbia has about 5,400 students. But besides the School of Engineering, the STEM activity also goes on in other schools like College of Arts and Science, College of Agriculture and Urban Sustainability. Then we have a community college in addition to these flagship colleges. But most of the STEM activities happens in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences. So the University of District of Columbia is one of the 14 HBCUs. There are about 14 HBCUs which have ABET accredited program. ABET stands for Accreditation Board for Engineering Technology, which accredits engineering, technology, applied science programs. So out of 360 engineering colleges in the country, these 14 schools are the HBCUs, which produce about 29% of African American graduates. Actually, it is a very powerful statistics, because these 14 HBCUs represent only about 4% of engineering schools in the country. There are only 356 engineering colleges, and 14 are only about 4%. But these 4% of the schools produce 29% of African American students, like graduates in this country. In fact, there is a booklet I have produced by Northrop Grumman, and it is from AMIE. It lists all the 14 schools and what's going on in each of these. At the University of District of Columbia, we have programs in different areas. We have programs in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, computer engineering, civil engineering. We have undergraduate programs, Bachelor of Science programs in these areas. Also have master's programs in some of these areas, computer science, electrical engineering. We are in the process of starting some new master's programs in mechanical engineering and civil engineering. And maybe in a year or two, we'll start Ph.D. program. This year, we are also starting a program in biomedical engineering. So we have a lot of other activities promoting STEM activities in DC and other areas. Our faculty members are working with a number of schools. We have grants from NSF, Department of Energy, NIST, and other areas where we try to bring students from high schools and work during the semesters as well as in summers. There are a number of programs going on there. So we are quite active. To address the issue which the chairman raised about creating graduates with some kind of innovative concepts, we are making an effort in this area. We believe that we have to produce graduates who are not only experts in their own field, but they should have entrepreneurial mindset. And this entrepreneurial mindset, which is crux of innovation, cannot be done by giving course, 2 course, or a concentration. It has to be built in the curriculum from first year to the final year. So in several courses, has to be built in. So there are some elements of entrepreneurship, the qualities to make an entrepreneur. It is not only just when you say entrepreneur, we are not looking at somebody starting a business, but those elements of entrepreneurship should be introduced in various courses. So our faculty members are actually revising the curriculum, starting from the freshman year, even including calculus, material science. We teach it in a certain way, had been teaching it in certain way, but we are now turning it around and then making the students think about more practical oriented approach, how to make it more interesting. So if we do it in 3 or 4 courses in the first semester, another 3, 4 courses second semester, by the time we do it 4 years, things will change. Then you have to have a lot of other entrepreneurial type of activities in the campus. We have to have entrepreneur in residence, and we have to have competitions, and then we have to have multidisciplinary project. So these are several changes we have been bringing. It is a part of our strategic plan for the university, so that in 3 to 4 years, the new graduates we produce will be those who will be addressing the real questions, real challenges of innovation, which the President, the Chairman raised just now. Thank you very much.
So I think we've gotten into this conversation, and again, I'd like for us to now bring it out to you, those colleagues who are out there. I want you to introduce yourself briefly, and again, offer some of your questions, and even if you have concepts that you'd like to recommend to our panelists, you are welcome to do so. Young man.
Wow, it's been years since I've been called young. Thank you very much. Let's see, I'm Dr. James Sherman with the Dane Alexander Payne Community Development Corporation. I'm a physicist, and I've served on the physics faculty at 2 HBCUs, and so I salute what your association is doing about trying to diversify the way the information is presented. But I was also reminded of a vital signs report that Change the Equation had last year about the state of engineering and minorities in there. And so one of the things they found was that 1/3 of African American high school students are at a high school which offers neither calculus nor physics. Mm-hmm. So so the problem is deeper than how it's presented. We need more faces being presented to. And unfortunately, one of the things with the president's last few budgets have been, even though the science agencies have been supported pretty strongly, the education programs in those science agencies have not been. NASA is a prime example. So that's one of the things that if we're talking about doing things from the ground up, we need to get these education programs supported as well. Also, for Mr. Jones, about 10 days ago, my granddaughter had her 6th birthday. Right. Lego Robotics birthday party, and she loved it. All the other kids loved it. The parents loved it, and they were amazed at what those students could do. Oh, great.
So I think that was a comment as opposed to a question, and I appreciate that, particularly about that concept of as a father of a 7-year-old and also an 18-year-old to be MD. I like those concepts that we can maybe utilize ourselves. Young man? And again, about you being young, I'll harken back, as you all may know, that just recently we celebrated, or recognized rather, not celebrated, but observed the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, or Malcolm X. And one of the things that Malcolm was known to have said, and again, a lot of people misinterpret and has misaligned, or maligned rather, some of his excellent quotes. One of the quotes that he said is that you are young as long as you're ready for change. And so I think that pretty much everybody here is ready for change, and so therefore we're all young. Young man.
Hi, I'm Taft Gaddy, CEO of Artesian Water Partners, Mr. Waterman. I wanted to mention 2 things. One, first of all, my grandson had a birthday party at the Lego place in Atlanta last week, and this Lego thing is really huge. But more importantly, I met with Dr. Dixon, Freddie Dixon, at your school, and introduced her to our STEM initiative to train students from high school, actually from grade school, to how to make reverse osmosis water systems, purify the water so they can sustain themselves over years to come. And my question to you is, you guys have a water resource component there, and because I've introduced that to your university, how could I partake in some of the National Science Foundation grants that are coming to you guys, and introducing this new concept that I've had, and recently just got endorsed worldwide, actually universally accepted at the International Bottled Water Tasting Competition this past weekend as a judge. So they recognized our company as universally accepted, Mr. Waterman. So we have some acclaim now, and we can stand against and with anybody as to our expertise in the water industry. So my question to you is, how, in fact, can we work together in increasing the knowledge and the wherewithal for our students to be innovators in developing water purification systems?
And Dean, as you talk about that, maybe you can talk a little bit beyond, because he hit on the NSF grants. Maybe you can talk about how much NSF has invested in your engineering program, and what more you think you need in order to, expand the number. Because you talked about how 20% of our HBCUs that our HBCUs are producing 28% of the diversity workforce. But how much more could you do with the right resources?
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to know that you have worked with Dr. Dixon, who is in the biology department, actually. Some of these work takes place in different units. The best way to perhaps take it further to the next step is to perhaps come to the College of Engineering. We have in civil engineering department, we have a good group in water resources and environmental sciences also. So we can put together a team where whatever has been conceptualized can be further produced like a prototype and can be implemented. So we have programs like that.
Excellent.
Right.
Excellent.
So that is something which we can really follow up.
Okay.
Right. We regarding the grants from National Science Foundation, the way it works is a faculty member really applies to some. There are several types of grants. Some are research grants, some are educational grants, some are STEM-related grants to popularize science, engineering, and mathematics. In research area, the faculty members look at what is cutting edge, because National Science Foundation funds only this research which is really at the cutting edge, which will contribute to the field. So that is one type of research grant. So we get about 1.5 million to 2 million so far, but it has been growing. I'm talking about our School of Engineering.
Applied research.
Right, but in the College of Arts and Science, it has been, in the area of biology, they have been getting more grants in that area. That is one type of grant. Another type of grant is education grants, how to improve the curriculum, how to make it more effective, how to bring innovation in the curriculum so that the students can learn smartly. So the funding in that area had been pretty good a few years ago. In the 90s, early 2000s, there had been a lot of educational type of innovative grants. It has gone down in the last. They have shifted a lot on research, but with the result that education, innovation in education has gone down. So that is something which we can address. But at the same time, the grants in the area of promotion of STEM is there, but it is very competitive for the universities to get. So if it can be increased in that area, so we will all benefit.
And one thing I'd like to add is that, as Linda may recall, we were just at the National Science Foundation, and the Education and Human Resources Directorate, which is the one that's specifically directing the monies in the STEM field for STEM promotion. And I understand there was an increase, a proposed increase in that budget, right? Linda, can you speak to that?
Yeah, they actually, the budget that they were putting forward in EHR, it seems to me that there was $13 million more than what they had gotten the previous year, that it had been approved by, the NSF was going to put that budget forward. And EHR had gotten a lot more money than other directorates as far as increases in their budget. It seems like it was, right? Do you remember it?
Yeah, that's my recollection as well. Young lady in the green.
Well,
Thank you. I'll take the young lady part, okay? I'm with the Department of Energy. My name is Cynthia Anderson, and I just recently did an executive on loan working with the school system. I'm a science engineer. And a couple of things I heard based on this conversation. I think one thing that the federal agencies could work together to pool their resources when we are writing grants, because what we have is DOD, DOE, DOL, DOE having various grants on STEM education, okay? But if we pool our resources, we can include more companies, we can include more nonprofit organizations. And one thing we did, we just recently had a grant. It was $5 million for 5 years, $25 million with 13 HBCUs, 2 national labs, and the school system, Charleston County School System when I was there. I think when we write grants as federal agency, we have to force the HBCUs or universities to work with your local school district and your HBCUs. And what I found out, the national labs, they don't naturally want to work with the HBCUs, or, they want the money themselves. But as federal agencies, we can write grants to say you have to partner with the local school system, with the local colleges, and then you get more of a collaboration, and even with nonprofit like you guys. And a couple other things. You talked about No Child Left Behind. Let me tell you what happened with No Child Left Behind. It was good because if you had a failing school, then they would give you transportation and you could transfer to another school that's not failing. But guess what? They have cut out the transportation part. So people in low income who don't have the resources can't transfer to these schools. So you still have these failing schools. And what I also saw with the failing schools, the federal government is not really going after these states and these school districts with the failing schools, because you have some failing schools who've been failing for 20 years and they're still right there. And I think the other thing I would like to say is we need to have the HBCUs partner with your local school district and with these grants. And we can work with the federal agencies to say, in the grant, you have to work with your local school district and a nonprofit in that area who's doing STEM-related activities. So it's ways that we could really reach the people who need to be reached if we write our grants. And go to grant.gov. Yeah. You also have to go, and you have to have somebody who's a good grant writer. And I see a lot of nonprofit and small business, they want to get into the federal government or get these grants, but they don't write good grants, so they get kicked out. So I think if you pull your resources together, nonprofit as well as the school district and HBCUs with good grant writers, you have a better shot of getting a grant.
I appreciate that, because I think the concept of collaboration is
right. You have to work together.
That was going to be one of the things I recommended. I know we've got a brother in the back, but you did ask a question before, so we'll take some of these up here. All right, young man.
Yes. Good afternoon. My name is Jason Turner, Vice President of Corporate Engagement for a national nonprofit called FedCap, and I'm leading our organization towards embracing education mechanisms like STEM. Other mechanisms like My Brother's Keeper, et cetera, to really accelerate the work that we're all interested in doing in STEM. And thank you for putting this together. Definitely have worked with Dean Shetty and UDC, and if you don't know, I will just, shameless plug for UDC, I'm from Washington, D.C. You guys are gonna see the University of District of Columbia come to national prominence over the next 10 years. I promise you, you're gonna be, if you know the history of UDC, 10 years from now, it's gonna be a totally different thing under this Dean's leadership. But that said, I wonder if we're using the right process here. I've gone to a lot of these conferences, as many of us, and we were saying, a lot of us were saying earlier beforehand, you're at a lot of these conferences, we all as young people know what the challenges are. We know that we have to have these things. We know that STEM is there. We know what's driving the economy. The things that I'm seeing that continue to be issues are how do we achieve scalability? How do we make it so that we are not 5 years from now only making incremental moves? How do we utilize resources best? It's great that, for instance, this brother here and this brother here and others have great programs. I would argue with my work that I've done in STEM, both as founding a STEM organization and working now with a national nonprofit, that more than programs, what we're missing is a platform. What we're missing is the platform. It's like if everybody was out there making a different cell phone device, but no one has the Google or Android platform that now everybody can just plug into. As a result, your program, If you have your 15 kids, you have how many kids, you have any kids. The problem is we need millions and millions of kids, to happen. I'm wondering, would the government look at using this model? If the U.S. government were going to renovate the Rayburn office building, we would not have a forum here where we would invite all sorts of window contractors and electricians and plumbers would not all come in here talking about, let me tell you about the way that I plug in a pipe. The architect of the Capitol or someone would hire a general contractor, a Turner Construction, someone who knows and builds buildings every day. And then they come to you and help you understand the program, then they set the timetable, they are paid to get it done on this time, and that's it. If we were talking about defense, national security, Department of Defense doesn't have acres and acres of folks researching, even though they do have researchers, but a key partner are people like Booz Allen, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin. That is where the American innovation is galvanizing around the government customer needs and accelerating that piece to market. I would argue, if I bring this to a close here, that the house that we're trying to build with STEM education is more valuable and more vital than the renovation of a government office building or perhaps more
F-22 fighter, I would say, which are about $100 million each.
A lot. So my question is, is the government interested in looking at program managers, companies, not necessarily nonprofits or for-profit? I don't care what it is, as long as that entity can come in and create the platform that all these brothers and sisters can come in and say, like a general contractor, and put those best practices together, and then that program manager would know all of the different government pots and then would bring that together and then tell these brothers what they can do and how to make it all happen. It seems to me that without that middle piece, we will continue to spin the wheels, have incremental process, and not have the major millions moving within the next 3 years that we need to make this happen.
That's a very good point. And let me see if I could tie in, because I think there's a couple of things that you've raised. You mentioned general contractor. You talked about the Department of Defense, and since we have someone here from Devdas' office, what's the annual budget for, let's say, the Department of Defense? You know that off the cuff.
So I'm in acquisition, and the money that goes through acquisition is about $450 to $500 billion.
Okay, and so the problem here is really scalability. You just said, right? We're talking about dividing up $3 billion, and they're talking about basically putting out in the market $400 billion, right? For a year. And that's for a year, right? And so I think what you've just hit on is the answer is in your question. Because the reason why they have $400 billion, right, is because they have lobbyists who work for Booz Allen and work for Martin Marietta and work for Northrop Grumman and work for Boeing, who make sure that the budgets, and the accounts in the Department of Defense are not touched. And they defend those to a T. And so, again, maybe what we need to be doing, as you just talked about, is, again, bringing some of our resources together and making sure that we advocate as forcefully as our defense companies are advocating, and making sure that we're not just talking about dividing up $3 billion, but we're talking about scaling that up so we can attack the problem in the way that you said, because I absolutely agree as a program manager, trained person, that's the type of approach that we need. Any other?
Yes, ma'am. I wanted to tell you about a project that we have. It's called the Common Vision Project, and we sent a white paper to the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and it's on our website. But it outlines the need for funding for what you're talking about. We've got professional societies in math and statistics that have come together, and ultimately the idea is to have a center that focuses on bringing evidence-based practices to scale. Because you're exactly right, these boutique programs work really well in a local context, and you might even have evidence that they work well in a local context, but they weren't designed with scale in mind, and that's why they don't scale. And so we have all of these, I don't know, hundreds, thousands, I don't know how many successful programs going on, but nobody has ever, tell me one that has ever been successfully brought to scale even, even, definitely not a national scale, right? As far as these, maybe there
Oh, yeah,
are. Education.
First robotics, I think is probably one.
Okay, math education, sorry. Undergraduate math education, help me in that.
Caveat.
That's what I know. And I know in our area, we just don't have those programs. I mean, we have successful calculus programs that we've identified, but sometimes when you try to move them to a different environment, they don't necessarily work as well, and you have to continue to research what's working, what do we need to keep, how do we tweak it for the local environment so that we have integrity of implementation so that it still works. So how do you do that? And so this center that we're talking about under the Common Vision, and I'll be happy to share with you the website so you can read that paper.
Common Vision.
Common Vision, and it's MAA.org, and if you do /common-vision, there will be an OSTP white paper over in the left-hand column you can get to that summarizes the program, the project, and talks about the funding that we need for this center.
So it's now 1:25, and I want to see if we can just get as many feedback points as possible. So what I'd like to do is kind of do a round robin. Anybody who has a question or point, if you just want to even introduce yourself and your organization, you can do so right now, and we'll have the panelists respond to as many as possible. Young man?
Yeah, so just quickly, I'm an import from California, just got here in September, part of the president's administration. But to your wish to be more entrepreneurial, offline, I'd like to plug you into the Stanford Design School that I'm very familiar with and a graduate of. And then for to your point about math education, I'm sure you're familiar with Khan Academy. So they have scaled worldwide and take this approach of teamwork to get people through very complex subjects. My kids got through calculus with Khan Academy. And then to the gentleman in the back, I teach robotics, and I'd like to plug in with you to get in your classroom. So,
and one point I'll also add to the point about the Math Association of America is some of you all might know. Has anybody heard of the Math Olympics? Yep. Well, the Math Olympics is one of the products of the Math Association of America, if I'm not mistaken. And I was talking to my colleague here about, again, the need for diversity. Because every once in a while she says that there might be a woman or a girl, a young woman in the competitors, the list of competitors, because it starts off as 300,000 competitors, students, over 400,000, 375,000 competitors, competing to participate in the program right across the country. And it's whittled down to a team of 12 that then go to a summer program, and then from that summer program they produce the team that represents the United States in the world competition that goes down to 6. And out of all of those competitors, that from the 375,000 down to the 12, and then down to 6. Every so often, they says there's a girl in that group, but she has not recalled there ever being an African American or rarely a Latino. We need to change that. We need to change that. Are you all committed to changing that? That's what we're talking about, and hopefully we will work together with the Math Association of America to make that happen. Any other comments back here? Yes, ma'am? Introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Shika. I'm a civil engineer major at Howard University, and I wanted to ask you about your comment about entrepreneurship, and also thank all the rest of the panelists. But how would you address that need for more entrepreneurship within minority communities when, like I'm in NESB, I'm in a lot of organizations, so many of them are catered to creating employees, like the perfect employee. So how would you really address that urgency for the entrepreneurship, which does generate a lot of revenue within minority communities that usually don't get those opportunities?
And if I can add to you, can I ask a question? Do you all teach an engineering and entrepreneurship class? I know that they just started one at Howard, and there needs to probably be more. I think there's only one semester or so.
It's its first semester.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, we have classes in entrepreneurship, both in engineering school as well as in business school. We have in the engineering school there is a course at the freshman level. It's more introduction to entrepreneurship. But the ideas I was talking about introducing entrepreneurial mindset is a little different. It is like changing each and every course throughout the curriculum so that it takes a while to get those. To address the issue you have raised, as a HBCU, we have a lot of minority graduates we produce. So perhaps what we can think of is as the students come up with some new ideas in the senior year, because we have a independent study senior capstone project. What we do is we work with companies, quite a number of companies, work on sponsored projects. But also there is an opportunity for students to create their own products. So the university, the college is thinking of really assisting some students to provide provisions and incentives so that they can set up their own companies.
So to create an incubator. Would you also, because of course every incubator needs to have some venture capital associated with it. It would make sense if we could get the city council to appropriate some money to have an incubator backed by, let's say, a $10 million, or even maybe imagine a $100 million venture capital fund housed right there at the University of District of Columbia in the School of Engineering.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Like in a senior year before somebody graduates, there is a capstone project. So some of these capstone projects they come from industries, sponsored projects. Okay. But there are some projects which are internally developed. There are some projects which are developed by the students as a part of a development of their products. So a number of these products can result in innovative products, which can be taken further if we have these facilities of incubation. So that is what we had been talking about now. We need some seed money.
Well, STEM4US would like to work with you, Dean. And in fact, we've proposed to the president of Howard University, Dr. Frederick, to do just that. And so as a school engineering alumni to a school engineering a student at Howard, I would challenge you to go back to school and get a meeting with both the dean as well as the president and tell them that we need to have at Howard University an incubator backed by a $10 to $100 million venture capital fund to make sure that our student and faculty led as well as alumni led concepts and innovations can get the light of day. They have that at the University of Maryland and at Virginia Tech, I believe, as well. We need to make sure that our HBCUs, all 15 of those HBCUs with engineering programs have the same, and that's what STEM4US. And we are a platform. We're probably not the general contractor that's backed by $400 million, which would be great, but we can at least work with the resources that we have right now. Young lady?
Just real quick.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Camille Coley. I'm also with the Department of Defense and Acquisition. And I wanted to piggyback off of your comment and yours as well, sir. As much as it's important to have those incubators available to those students, you have to provide them the education and background to be able to be successful business leaders. So there's actually a really well-known program. It's called the National Collegiate Innovation and Innovators Alliance. It's now called VentureWell. They have conferences every year. This year's conference will be here in DC. And the whole purpose of it is to create new innovators at the collegiate level. And so what they do is they work with colleges and universities to develop STEM entrepreneurship programs. So rather than just having that one class, you're trying to ingrain it into the culture of becoming a STEM professional, because that's really what it is. You have to learn. I grew up within STEM. I'm now in business. And you have to be able to make that connection. When you grow up as a biologist or a chemist or an engineer, you're not necessarily thinking, I'm going to go and start a business. Usually you're thinking, as she mentioned, I'm going to try to find a company or a university that I can go work in for, until I hit tenure or until I retire, etc. And so what we need to do, just like we have to catch our students by 4th grade for STEM, we have to start making the connection for them between these other alternatives and possibilities for jobs and being creators rather than just researchers. And that, in fact, my office is working within working with the Army. There's a program called Cyber Mission. It's a program for 6th to 9th graders where they go out and they figure out how to solve problems within their communities. And we've got what's called the STEM in Action program, and that is to help those students who have won that competition learn how they can now patent their ideas, how their ideas fit into the marketplace. What does that all mean so that they can start making that connection? I think that what you're really getting at is a culture shift, and I think you too, sir, were talking about really a culture shift.
Yeah, exactly. Like we had been creating graduates who are problem solvers, as most of the engineering school, but we have to create engineers who are opportunity creators. That should be the focus. That's what we are thinking of. One new initiative which has been going around the country, especially White House also is interested, is on the maker thing, or additive manufacturing. The whole area of manufacturing engineering is changing because of this new technology of additive manufacturing, where you can make things much cheaper, lightweight, energy efficient also. So the whole area is picking up, but using that, it is an exciting field. There are equipment which are much cheaper. So the students can connect, like when they create a product, they can see, they can produce it
absolutely
immediately. So that is one area which the universities are moving these days.
Well, I have one last question, and I want to ask her to introduce herself and ask your question, young lady in the red. Did you raise your hand? No. Okay, great. Well,
may I just have a request, please, that individuals who offered services, can you just stick around for a half a minute? I know we're rushing to get to our next thing, so we can network.
Absolutely. Well, that's the purpose of this conversation, is to create this type of forum so we can all share information and work together. I think in the kind of conclusion, and I'll let the comments come from our panelists, but interdisciplinary approaches, right? Interdisciplinary collaborations, I believe, are going to lead to game changers. We have started at STEM4US a couple of initiatives. One that speaks to the issue of the venture capital money. We've called on the industry to create a $100 million plus worth of venture capital money that would be funded specifically for African Americans, women, Latino, and Native American run companies. Over the last time period that it's been tracked, it was suggested that only 1% of all the venture capital money that came out of Silicon Valley went to African American owned companies, and 2% went to women owned companies. In order to create the type of, as you said, change, because if you're not getting the type of venture capital to actually get your company to the market, you could come up with the next idea that would save billions and billions of dollars for the federal government and other private industry. But if your company isn't getting the type of investment, then we as a country, we as a nation, are not benefiting from that. And if the reason why you're not getting that is because the people who are making those decisions, those funding decisions, just happen to have implicit bias, right? Again, based upon their upbringing, they have implicit bias that are just negative, discounting you just because of how you look. Then we as a nation have a problem, and we need to eliminate that inefficiency, right? And so that's the conversation that I think we need to have. Let's have everybody just close this out with quick remarks. Dean?
Yeah, quick remarks is just, as I mentioned before, we should be looking at our curriculum. In fact, in our case, we look at our curriculum. How do we address, what sort of graduates we had been creating, but does it address the real needs of the society? So if not, I think we have to really change our curriculum in such a way the students or graduates are more opportunity creators, innovators, and are able to generate impact.
Thurman?
My passion is 5th grade and 12th grade students, get them ready to go into these STEM careers. As you know, a lot of times when we come to the table, all people that make the decisions are really at the table. So my goal is to really get these students prepared and excited, because I want them to be engineering, because that's the technology in the STEM field, but we also need funding for math. But we need to prep these students for the resources they need to be successful engineers.
Yeah, and I want to, I guess, go back to the Common Vision Project. I think it's really important that we're able to find funding so that we can present as a mathematics community, so that we can sort of work together to modernize our curriculum so that it better serves engineers and physicists and other STEM fields. We understand that the M is the foundation of these other STEM areas. And so students are not going to be able to be successful in those careers if they don't have a good foundation in mathematics. So that's our drive. We happen to focus on the undergraduate level, but we do work with other levels, like the National Council of Teacher of Mathematics focuses on K-12, so we work with them as well. But the undergraduate level is our focus.